If you've ever looked up a YouTube video about how a car or part of a car works, you've likely seen this guy before. But he's not blitzing down an Idaho highway over 200 miles an hour. He's in front of the whiteboard, filling your brain with all the automotive engineering ins and outs you could ever ask for. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason, the Bullet Fenske of Engineering Explained.
You're the first one to say that, so I don't know if you can actually say it's like a proper nickname since you just made it up in this moment.
I actually I posted the footage I got of the McLaren on Instagram and put you in there as Jason the Bullet Fenske as well.
Okay, so two references by the same person.
Yeah, well, that's what it takes to make it official. I think it has to be two. You're
Great.
here and you didn't deny it, so it sounds in my head like that.
People are saying.
Word on the street is you, Jason the Bullet Fenske.
Yeah, it was cool to go fast. I'd never gone 200 miles an hour before, but now that I have, I guess the Bullet is an appropriate name, huh? I think bullets go quicker than 200.
Well, yeah. Well, you don't need, I guess, of anybody to argue that logic. It makes sense for you to. But anyway.
Can we change it to the Bullet Train? Don't those go like 200?
Okay.
It sounds real dumb when you put train on it, though.
No, but you have to drop the rest of the name. You just have to be
Jason the Bullet Train. It's just Thomas the Tank Engine and Jason the Bullet Train.
Just the Bullet Train. When you're driving, oh, you sold the Miata, so it's just a Crosstrek now. Someone's going to see you in the Crosstrek and be like, oh, there goes the Bullet Train. That guy's crazy.
Yeah, Crosstrek is unfortunately not capable of those speeds.
Yeah, well, that is a tragedy. But at any rate, welcome to MotorBiscuit. I just wanted to bring you here and chat about that experience, a couple other car-related things. But
cool, let's do it.
Just the whole McLaren thing. If people haven't seen your video, McLaren brought you out to the Sun Valley Tour de Force, which is an event that I attended. They shut down the highway in Idaho and let supercar owners and Jason the Bullet Fenske drive as fast as they can possibly go. And it's pretty routine to see cars go over 200 miles an hour. But before this, what was the fastest car you'd ever driven? You mentioned in your video.
Before this, and I have this will be a first that someone will see what I'm about to show you. So this is great.
Exclusives.
Exclusives, yes. So the fastest I had gone previously was on the Autobahn in a Hyundai Veloster N. So I went to the Hyundai Veloster N launch, which was in Germany. Because the Al Bierman, who's like the engineer behind it, used to work for BMW did M development. So anyways, I got to drive 155 in a Hyundai, which was cool. But now I have beaten that. And look at this carbon fiber. I'm going to keep my body in front so it doesn't.
Oh, wow.
200 mile per hour club.
Are you to put that on the Crosstrek?
Yeah, definitely putting it on the Crosstrek. It's probably capable of getting within 80 miles per hour of the target. Maybe.
That's pretty close. It's honestly reasonably fast enough for me because I was talking to you about this at the event, but I don't know, even given the opportunity to do it in someone else's car, if I have the mental capacity to get myself to do that. So what in your head was going on leading up? How do you mentally prepare to drive 200 miles an hour on a regular road?
I was scared about it too, honestly. And then I thought the day before, so we got to drive around and I got to look at the road the day before in the same cars. And I was like, man, this is going to be terrifying. I was genuinely I don't know. I really don't know. I texted my wife. I was like, I probably won't do it, but I really want to. Because it's how often you get this opportunity, especially on an American public road to just try it out, right? It's illegally, you shouldn't do this. We'll just leave it at that. And so legally, how often do you get these opportunities? Pretty rare. And a lot of racetracks genuinely just don't have long enough straights where you can actually try things out. Because I've been on tons of tracks. I've driven, 140 many times, but have I driven 200 ever? No. So it's hard to get to these speeds because most places that you can legally do this don't have long enough sections for it. So I was scared. I think the two motivating factors were, I guess it also helps that it wasn't my car. I didn't know how much the car cost either until afterwards. And they were like, it's a $370,000 car. And I was like, oh, that's more than I spent on my house. Nice.
Cool.
So Motivating factors was like, it's a rare opportunity, so I better go for it. Like I should. And then the other thing was like, if you looked far ahead, if you looked really far ahead, it genuinely was like less scary. So if you didn't focus on what was around you, it was like, yeah, what's happening is terrifying, but like, I'll just look way out there, let the moment go by, and then like I can go rewatch the footage and see how like scary everything is passing around me. So I kind of tried to get this like little tunnel vision, and that was like my strategy of like, don't look around, don't think about it, just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, and that is insane. You were kind enough to share some GoPro footage with me from in the car that I ran in our Sun Valley Tour de Force video. And
Yeah.
it's so hard to get GoPro footage to look like you're going fast. Like, how many times have you shot, like, you were like, oh man, I was really hauling there. It looks like you're going 20 on a GoPro.
Yes.
Just the fact that on camera it looked like you were going super fast. I was like, that looks absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
But
I agree. And there's one shot that I think kind of does it the best because there's not a lot of like trees around. But there's one shot in my video where it's just facing me, and you can see some trees in the windows pass by. And I mean, they're just like boom and just like gone. And it's just like, okay, like that's quick. And it's
yeah,
right at the beginning. So it's not when you're actually doing your fastest speed. I was probably at like 180 or so when these trees are passing by. But it's just like the tree just disappears, and it's like, okay, that's quick.
yeah, and even from the ground footage that I shot when I was standing up on the hill and got you coming from behind it when you're coming out of that corner. And like even in that video, I for a second thought my own footage was sped up when I watched it back. And I was like, that's so crazy, because I was trying to zoom in, get a decent shot
Yes.
of it. And I've never shot from that perspective at that event before. So that spot really gives you an idea of how fast you're going. And it's not like well known. If you see videos of that event, you don't realize that there's this huge blind corner. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought it up in your video, because how fast were you coming out of that corner?
So coming out of the corner was 170 on both runs. And it's like, it is scary. But so the reason why I had like some comfort there is I was about to do it, and they were like, hey, you've got 2 runs. Like the first one, like just make sure you're comfortable. If you hit 150, 160, 170, who cares? Like, you just get comfortable with it. And I was talking with someone right before I went, and they had, I think it was a 95 Dodge Viper. And they were like, you can go flat out through this corner. And I was like, oh, that seems so scary. Like, because you can't see where you're going. Like, it is genuinely blind. And they're like, oh, you can do it. Like, I'm going to be doing it in a Viper, and it does it no problem. And I was like, okay, if a 95 Viper can do this, like I
Yeah.
can do it in a modern McLaren with like modern, stability control, traction control, modern aerodynamics. Like, it's going to be fine. Modern, yeah, tires. I mean, everyone had to run tires within 5 years, but still, like, running that in a Viper would terrify me.
Yeah, that's a really good starting like reference point for anything. Like if you can do that in a first gen Viper, then whatever you're driving should have no problem not killing you.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, how does it feel at 200 miles an hour? Well, you did 212 is the top speed of the car, right? And
Yeah. So the
213
car,
indicated.
213 indicated. Someone else drove the car and brought GPS on, and they said when it was reading 213, their GPS was reading 214. The speed trap said 215 for them when it was reading 213. So I think it was actually pretty close to that speed, like somewhere around 212. I mean, often speedometers can be a little off. I would say I was like probably in the moment more focused on, can I get this done? And like, rather than like sitting there and enjoying like, wow, this is like insanely fast. It was like, I just want to hit 200. And I like looked down, and on my first run, it actually happened pretty quick. So I looked down and I see it reads 212, which is the top speed. And I was like, oh, we're already there. And like, I got to get way down there before like I'm done with this, because that's where the speed recording is. So like, I have to hold this. So it was like, and it looked pretty far away. I mean, it came pretty quick, but even still, it was like, oh, I've got to like chill at 212 for a good while going down this road. And then I think the way they have braking set up, my biggest concern actually was braking before, when I learned about the event. And I was like, well, how much space do we have? Like, do I actually have to like hammer onto the brakes, or is it like a chill let off and go with it? And it's very much so like a chill, just release, start to get on the brakes. Because sketchy things can happen, especially if you have like different bite at a different corner, and it
Right.
wants to like wiggle the car, and at 200 miles per hour, that can turn into a disaster quick. So I like that we had so much space to slow down. That also helped in confidence of just like, let's go for it.
Yeah, I think it's a whole mile of braking
Yes.
space, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another thing that people probably don't think about that event. But the first time I attended, I started thinking the same thing. But yeah, and then in the driver's meeting, they tell you if you're not going the speed limit by the end of that mile, the police will give you a ticket, which
Yeah. And
is
somebody blew past this year.
oh really?
Yeah. They were done with the event.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's did he get a ticket is the question
I
because
don't know. I don't know.
I got one while I was driving up
Oh,
there
did
for
I get a ticket?
oh no, did anybody? Or well, that guy, I guess.
Oh, I
But
don't know. They actually do. I'm not going to show it because it has, well, I'll cover up the personal information, but
mhm.
they send you a ticket
Oh wow.
of your run. So it's like a real ticket that the cop, whoever's there, like monitoring the situation, writes you a real ticket. And so it says 213 on it. And it's like, oh boy. All right, cool.
That's way cooler than mine because mine actually cost me money and I was only doing 50 and a 35.
So brutal.
It's not even worth it. I guess I could frame it, but it's
Brandon,
not quite the same.
what was it like doing 50 miles per hour?
I tell you, the Fiesta was, I had to be doing 1900 RPM, sixth gear, full of camera and camping gear. And that officer saw
Wow.
me come around the corner. I could see his eyes. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I hope I don't go to prison for this one.
Amazing.
But moving on from the McLaren stuff, I know we're kind of limited on recording time for Zoom, and it very generously doesn't tell me how long we've been going, so that's pretty neat. But
Well, it's been no more than 20 minutes. So we have at least 20 minutes.
okay,
Anyways.
perfect. So I guess we'll just go as far as we can because I know the GR Corolla hasn't actually come out yet, but I thought you get a chance to drive most new cars when they come out, so I figured you are a great person to get some input. But what do you feel is the most exciting 2022 announced car of the Z, the GR Corolla, or the new Integra?
Between GR Corolla, Z, and Integra.
Yeah.
I would say I think the GR Corolla is the coolest because I think we often there are different markets, right? And I feel like the GR Corolla is a kind of car that we are told doesn't do well in our market. And so many vehicles have dropped out, like the STI hatch,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they stopped making the Type R for a bit, but it's come back. The Focus RS went away, and like these are really sweet machines, and I
Oh
really
yeah.
wish we had more competition in that segment because they're really fun cars, and they're all hatchbacks, which makes them like actually useful and practical vehicles. So you can kind of have a bit of the best of both worlds. And so I'm excited to see that coming here. I am going to be trying it out, I think, at the end of this month. So yeah, I'm excited about the GR Corolla. The Integra, I owned an Integra. It was my first car. I feel like it should have the Type R engine. I think it's kind of disappointing that it's the 1.5 turbo. I'm not stoked on that engine, though I have heard that it's a great driver's car and it's a good car. And I have heard that the new Civic, Civic Si is actually really fun. I drove the previous still 1.5 liter turbo and I didn't think anything much of it. The Type R is phenomenal. The Civic Si I was not sold on. So I've heard the Integra is fun, but I feel like it could use the cooler engine. And then for the Z, I have a ton of respect for Nissan for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, it is a carryover, but it does feel new. So I respect that it's not like a BMW,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that says Toyota on it, and like literally every single part is a BMW part. So I respect that Nissan did it themselves. It's their own engine, it's their own technology, their own engineering. Great. And I think it's a fun car. I'm not super into turbo style vehicles. And so probably I'll feel that way about the GR Corolla as well, because it's a tiny little engine with a lot of boost. So it's probably going to have significant lag. But I'm excited for it. I think it'll be sweet.
Yeah, that's I was really curious about your input on the Integra because I knew you had one for a long time and I had one for a while as well. It's one of my favorite cars I've ever owned.
Yeah.
And I knew you were an authentic Integra owner when the first time I brought up that I had one, and I told you I drove it to Los Angeles from here in Boise, Idaho. And the first thing you asked was how much oil it used. I was like, oh, this guy knows.
Yeah, I went through an entire oil change because so when I graduated college, I moved from North Carolina to Oregon, and I went through an entire quantity of that car's oil just to get across the country. More than how much, but it wasn't two oil changes. It was like one and a pinch.
Well, that's what's beautiful about the B Series Honda engines. You don't ever have to change the oil because you always are. So it's perfect.
It's always getting rid of it for you, whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, I feel the same about the new Integra. I also am really disappointed that the automatic variant is a CVT and not a dual
Ooh,
clutch. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
But they have a manual, so props to them.
right. That's true. And to the point of a lot of people, like not every Integra was a Type R, and it is what it always was. It's just a luxurious Civic. But
Yes.
so if they
Yeah,
do,
when they talk about it, all their points are valid. Like this is what it was, this is what it is now. And it's like, yeah, that's fine, but it's just like I feel like we have so much like nostalgia through names alone.
mhm,
And it's like, oh, we're bringing this back. We're bringing back the Supra. We're bringing back, whatever. And it's like it feels like there could have been more effort to actually positioning them for an enthusiast crowd. And maybe the Integra was never meant for that.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah, and that is interesting too, because like with the Supra, Toyota kind of proved that you can go entirely off the beaten path and, in a lot of people's words, not mine, don't cancel me, disrespect the heritage of the Supra and still do fine with sales, and it immediately built a cult following. So I do feel like the Integra misses a mark in there to some extent, but I'm sure it's fine to drive. It's just
yeah.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna quit while we're
I
behind.
like that it's a hatchback. I like that it's a manual. So I give them credit for both of those things because more cars in that price segment should offer those options.
And you say you're not a fan of turbocharged cars. I assume that means you're more of a fan of bigger displacement NA stuff.
Yeah, even though everything I've owned has been like a tiny four-cylinder. Um, yeah, I like superchargers. I like naturally aspirated. I like big engines. I like response. I think that's the big thing. If somehow there were a turbo, like you could do it with an electric turbo, but if
Mhm.
somehow there were turbocharged engines that didn't have lag and didn't have a certain RPM at which that boost was available, then I'm all for it. But unfortunately, that's like not how a turbocharger works. I mean, by design, it will have flaws. So I like response, and like electric cars kind of like bring that to the next level of like you get everything the second you ask for it. And once you start getting used to that, it's like, in my opinion, pretty difficult to go back to like a super laggy engine and then just be like, oh, this is fine. It's like, but it could be way better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a C8 Corvette loaner right now, and
Nice.
I'm kind of like, oh yeah, it's just all
The
there
response
immediately.
is
It
fantastic. I think Porsche engines also do it really well. Like naturally aspirated Porsche engines, like the response you get, like it, as like someone who loves driving EVs, like it is very difficult to say one or the other realistically is that much quicker. And when do you put your foot down and when do you get a response from it? Like
right.
Porsche naturally aspirated engines are incredible.
And that's actually a great transition because the next thing on my list was regarding your Tesla Model 3.
Yes.
Um, One of the things you did when you got the car was you addressed the well documented quality control issues that Tesla has with paint and everything like that. And I know anytime we post anything about electric cars, that's a talking point. Sorry, my laptop's about to die. My charger's sitting 2 feet away and I didn't plug it in. Um, but I was
Very
curious.
responsible.
Yeah, I'm a professional, can't you tell? I was curious about what kind of backlash you got for pointing out actual flaws with Tesla paint and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. Um, yeah. So I don't know. Tesla's weird to work with. Like they don't have a PR. Are you saying like audience standpoint or Tesla standpoint?
Well, I guess both is interesting, but the audience is what I'm curious about because
Okay. I don't think. I don't know. I think realistically speaking about how your car arrived is a totally fine thing to do. And so if people have problems with it and are upset, it's like, all right, whatever. The thing is, like, Tesla has a cult following. And I think there are reasons why they should, and I think there are reasons why they shouldn't. And so you get a good variety of people. Like, I think Tesla makes incredible cars. And the thing is, like, Car and Driver did some study recently, or not that recently, but several years ago, where it was like, let's look at average like paint flaws and like panel gaps and that sort of thing. And they found, across the spectrum, Tesla was like average. Like, they
Hmm.
were better than some, they were worse than others. And so it's like we all hear about this, but really it's because like Tesla gets views.
Hmm.
And so it's like, are they worse than everyone else out there? Some of them, yeah, but they're actually better than like plenty out there. So it's
Hmm.
like, you don't hear that. You just hear like, oh, like it arrives and it's crap. And it's like, for my case, I got two cars. I ended up selling the first one immediately and trading it in because I didn't want the mid range. But my second one was like way better. And it had very few like defects and weird gaps and stuff. My first one was kind of all over the place. It was kind of a mess. But yeah, I don't know. If it mechanically works fine, that's what I am more concerned with. I
Hmm.
think people say because it has these flaws, it must have these other flaws. And it's like, you're making something up. Like, you are creating an assumption. Like, maybe, yes, maybe not. Like, you don't know. Like, you can't say because something has paint flaws, the battery is good or bad. Like, you
Right.
can't make a decision.
And you know, you the people you run into in that light are often the people that also still think if you drive a Tesla on a road trip, you have to stop for 14 hours to charge it every time. So, you know, it's a losing battle to fight, but it was very curious to me when you posted that video, to see people in the comments like, well, what are you complaining for? You bought the cheapest one and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. So yeah, it's very interesting just to see all the backlash involving anything with an electric vehicle. But that actually does. Oh, go ahead.
Well, at this point, I want to buy a different car. I
Oh yeah,
genuinely want a different electric car to replace it. Like, I like its little segment and I want to keep something like it. But I think it's the best for its price range, even though, I've had it for 4 years. Like, 4 years have gone by and I still don't think that there's something that fits that segment. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep it until I see something better. That Hyundai concept, the N74
yeah, yeah,
thing, looks incredible.
yeah,
If it ever were to exist, yeah, I'm in.
yeah.
Um,
I wrote an article about that. I was like, please, 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 just keep that even similar to that concept design and make that a production car. I
yes,
know it's like not going to be the top selling car. It might even be towards the bottom, but I'll
yes,
figure out a way to buy one if you bring that to reality,
I
Hyundai.
know,
But
man, it is so good looking.
but that's well, have you driven a Polestar too?
I haven't, and I've heard, so I haven't driven it, so I shouldn't give much thought on it, but I've heard it feels kind of more crossover, more SUV like than more
Mm,
car like.
yeah, I
And
could
that's
see
kind of
that.
the platform it's based on, so that makes sense. But yeah, I haven't. I do need to try out the new BMW M50Xi MWQR, whatever they call their vehicles. And it seems cool, but it doesn't look great in my opinion. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
kind
know.
of with you on that one. But yeah, that's the Polestar is it's a little bit of a goofy car, but as a lifelong Volvo diehard, I was pretty excited about it. But I haven't driven one either, so that's just my brand association speaking. But I have one more question on my list here, and it's still
Great, let's
pertaining
do it.
to EVs. But what of any car you can think of would you like to see electrified?
Hmm. I mean, I genuinely want there to be an electric Miata. And it doesn't have to be like Miata, but I want there to be small, convertible, rear wheel drive electric. And it doesn't have to have 300 miles of range. Like, I don't care. I want it to be light. It can be a city car.
Hmm.
So I would love it. The thing is, I think they know no one will buy it
Right.
if it doesn't have much range. So, like, to me, it'd be perfect if it was like 100, 150 miles of range and it was a city car and you could just mess around with it. But keeping that range low means you keep the battery small, means you keep it actually lightweight. Like,
Hmm.
I think people forget the Tesla Roadster, the original Roadster, was like less than 3,000 pounds. So it's like
Hmm.
it can be done. Like you can have really cool, lightweight, small electric car, and that actually had decent range. So it's like I would love to see something in that segment that is, not priced ridiculously, like something that's priced like a Miata.
Yeah, that actually would be fantastic. I could, because I've had a few Miatas, and I know you had S2000 as well. So I guess I should have seen that coming,
Yeah.
the electric roadster request. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny too, because I believe Mazda fairly recently was like, we wanted to have internal combustion forever. So that's
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
maybe a
Mazda's good
tall
at
order.
response in their defense. Like, and I think their math also checks out. Like Mazda talks about, like we talk about like lowering carbon emissions, right? And like, what's the most effective way to do it? And Mazda's like, look, if people are going to buy combustion engines and we make them really efficient, we can actually create a really large impact by just making more efficient, like combustion engines. And I think that's a solid, like midterm strategy if you're looking at what is the overall goal. So I get that, and they do make really efficient engines. But yeah, I think a little electric roadster would be sick.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Was there anything else you want to tell
No.
287 Motor Biscuit subscribers, my
Whoa,
friend?
all 287. Load up Braden with requests of what content he should make so that he has this endless list that he can never complete and always feels behind in his work.
That sounds awesome. I'm I'm really looking forward to that. I appreciate that very much. But thank you so much for joining us, Jason. This has been I don't even know what to call it. We're just going to call it an interview with Jason, the Bullet Train Fenske.
Self-proclaimed. Thanks,
Thank,
Braden. Great chatting with you.
yep, great talking to you too. Be sure to subscribe and hit the like button and do all the other YouTube things. And I will see you in our next installment.